All right, I am Andy Lockmears, and it is wonderful to be here. I'm very pleased to introduce a colleague of mine, Danny Carroll, who has written a very seminal book, Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis. He's also writing a lot of other books as well as a community write. But Danny, to me, is an innovator. He's looking at this amazing amount of information that Dr. Hammer discovered, and he's applying it in ways that are unique and different and that can really benefit so many people. Danny, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So you have discovered something, you've developed something called the bioswitch. What is that?
Okay, let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Please
Because
do.
that explains it the best. In 2012, I had what I would describe as a cathartic healing experience. What happened is I had golf ball sized knots in my muscles
Yeah.
for a 6 month period. And I'm talking my calves, my thighs, my back, my arms. And at that point in time, I was running ultra marathons. I got into the Guinness Book of Records running ultra marathons in 2010. I used to have quite a bad running habit. At this point in time, Andy, I could barely walk, forget running. Um, and those knots magically disappeared overnight. A quick backstory. Basically, my now wife, then girlfriend, is an American diplomat, and she was working in Bombay, where I live. And her next posting was in Santiago de Chile,
Oh,
which is a 40-hour journey from
yeah.
Bombay. It's, I think, 17 hours from DC or something, right?
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah.
so we agreed that when she left India, that we would go our separate ways, and I went to her house the night before to essentially to say goodbye. And we had a very long, difficult night, and decided that we couldn't end the relationship. And then, so we were doomed to this ridiculous long distance relationship. And when I went to sleep at night time, I had all of these knots in my body, and had 6 months previously. And when I woke up in the morning, they had all gone. Poof.
So you'd had them for 6 months. You have this talk, you realize you're not going to split, and the next day they're gone.
They all just disappeared. Right
Okay.
now, at the time, I didn't know why they came. I didn't know why. All I knew was the only difference between Friday night and Saturday morning was that I'd solved the problem or the conflict of terminating the relationship with what at the time was my soulmate, and luckily still my soulmate, right? Um, so that set me on a journey of I wanted to understand what is this spontaneous cathartic healing where you go from being crippled for a 6 month period, to recovering your health essentially at the snap of your fingers, right?
Right. Right.
So this is what got me on the journey, right? And this is essentially what put me on the journey of finding Dr. Hummer. So I started studying what was then Germanic New Medicine, um, Germanic Heilkund, Germanic Healing Knowledge, whichever
Oh,
you prefer to call it. Um, so I started studying in 2012. I studied under Ilse-Dora Laker, and I took my practitioner's course in 2015.
mhm.
Um, and from then, I mean, Andy, I've never practiced health consulting, right? I've never been a GNM or GHK consultant, essentially. But what happened is after 2015, I started to get a flood of people coming to me. I mean, I've always had people come to me for help, right? But after I finished my practitioner's course, I got a lot of people coming to me.
Oh,
And um, uh, Ilse taught us to read brain CT scans.
mhm.
And I took reading or learning to read brain CT scans up with rigor all the way from the beginning, because it was something I was very keen to learn.
Good.
Um, I'd often be in a situation, Andy, where I would have these. Mostly, it was mostly like late stage or terminally ill uh, cancer patients who would come to me, right? I mean, at that point, I was working in venture capital. I'm not a doctor, and I
Right,
mean,
right,
why would you come to me, right? So,
right.
anyways, people would come to me typically when they either got sent home to die or when they lost confidence in the medical system. And
Mhm.
I'd be sitting there, right? Brain CT, medical diagnostics, everything. Essentially, when you have the brain CT, you know everything that's going on in somebody's
Yeah,
life, right?
right, right,
So I'd sit there and, I know, looking at a problem, left lung alveoli has been triggered, so they've had a fear of death conflict, right? So
right,
then then you sit there and you say, oh, you've had a fear of death, this, that, well, or you replace fear of death with anything, right?
right.
And and many times I would always be in a situation where I've got a brain CT, I know exactly what's going on in somebody's life. And like, have you experienced this? No. Have you experienced this? No. Have you experienced this? No, 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 no. I mean, so I learned very early on in my GHK learning journey that the subconscious mind buries trauma,
Mhm.
right? And now, when the subconscious mind has buried trauma, essentially it means that in your conscious mind that you've not experienced it, right? So
Right.
you'll no doubt be familiar with Dr. Hummer's case study of the acts of turnover, right?
Mhm.
Where the old man basically had an axe in his chest,
Yeah,
and had to travel 13 miles on the back of a bullock cart with an axe in his chest. And
yeah,
Dr. Hummer said to him, "Have you ever had any attack on the heart?" No, 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 never had an attack on the heart, right? Yeah, bloody axe in his chest, and he was in ICU for 3 months, right? When the subconscious mind, I so often, Andy, because as I was dealing with terminally ill cancer patients primarily, right?
yeah,
So very often I would get into a situation where I would say, okay, these conditions are caused by that problem. I've seen your organ level diagnostics, your brain level diagnostics. You have experienced this. Like, no, I haven't.
right.
No, I
Exactly.
haven't.
The mind does funny things for
And
us.
it
Yeah.
got frustrating is the wrong word. I couldn't help a lot of people, right? Because the subconscious mind had buried the trauma,
Mhm.
and I didn't have the skill. Dr. Hum was sitting there saying, "Oh, do you to the old man who had pericardial effusion, and he's sitting there saying, "Oh, do you have a dog?" Right? I mean, who thinks of asking that question when you got a man sitting there with fluid in his heart? Right? Do you have a dog? Right? I mean, that
Right.
was the subconscious track or reminder that got that memory to surface. Right? I mean, I don't have that skill, Andy. You know,
Yeah. Well, who does? I mean, Dr. Hammer was so incredibly
a
amazing.
genius, right? An
Yeah,
absolute
total genius.
genius, right? So
Right.
I didn't have that skill. So I started in about 2017, starting to look for modalities that could help me to get these buried subconscious traumas to surface.
Yeah.
And that's essentially where the journey of developing the bios. It's a long story, right, to get to that. But that's how the bioswitch needs the mother of all creation, Andy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
if you can't solve a problem, if you've got a buried trauma, and you're sitting there asking somebody, have you ever experienced a fear of death or this or that or whatever, and they say no, 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 an axe in your heart, no, 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 no axe in my heart, right? Then you've got to find a way to solve that problem. So my journey of studying the subconscious mind, like everything, was born out of need.
Hmm.
Um, I had problems that with the scientific chart, I knew exactly what caused the problem. I had a
Hmm.
brain CT. I could confirm that the problem has actually existed. But then when you're asked if that's been buried, then essentially the person hasn't experienced it, right? So
Right. Right.
so unless you have Dr. Hummer's skill of
Yeah.
asking somebody if they have a dog when they got pericardial effusion, right? Which unfortunately I don't have, right?
Yeah.
So so then I
Exactly.
then I went hunting looking for modalities that could help me out both understand the subconscious mind, how it works,
Mhm.
and then learning the tools and techniques you can develop in order to get buried memories to
Yeah.
surface. That was the starting point of the journey.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. And how did it evolve into the bioswitch itself?
So I I I have to experience everything myself, right? So what I from essentially from my first experience of getting a subconscious memory to surface was actually in about I think 2014, right? So I had this situation where I bought a vessel. The traffic in Bombay is terrible, right? So the only way to get around the city is on a I bought a Vespa, right? So
Uh,
what happened is whenever I was riding the Vespa around town, I used to get panic attacks, right? Whenever I would see a line in the road, right? Two pieces of cement, two pieces of tarmac, whenever two lines in the road came, I used to get anxiety and panic attacks. And I'm
oh
like,
my gosh.
what on earth is going on?
Right.
Right? And again, I had these panic attacks for like 6 or 8 months, right? And then I'm scratching around in my subconscious mind. Why is it kind of? I know theoretically that this is a danger warning signal, but I had no recall as to why I was having these panic attacks. Right now, after scratching around in my subconscious mind for long enough, I managed to get a memory to surface of when I was in Bali in 1997, right, 17 years before.
Wow.
I was in Bali with my girlfriend, and we hired a scooter to get around the island, and we were driving along the highway, and all of a sudden this track opened up, which was about 4 inches wide and about 10 meters long in the highway, and my front wheel went down the track before I could take evasive action, and we got thrown off the bike at like
Yeah.
60 kilometers an hour or something, right? And then
Wow.
we got hurt, right? So,
Right.
so my subconscious mind had buried
Right.
that experience, right? So my subconscious mind buried the experience, and then when I then started driving around Bombay, my subconscious mind stored a line in the road as being dangerous, right?
Danger, danger.
Danger, 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 right? Which is why I was getting the panic attacks
Right.
when I was on the bike. Now, when my subconscious allowed that memory to surface, and when I consciously connected, I said, "Oh, okay, subconscious mind. I know you've stored a line in the road as being dangerous because there was a line in the road in Bali and we got thrown off the bike and hurt, right?" As soon as I consciously connected the line in the road in Bali with the
Mhm.
lines in the road in Bombay, so then what happens is that, I mean, the subconscious mind indicates danger when you've either forgotten about something or when it's buried in experience or when you're
Yep.
just not paying attention, right? So it steps up when you're essentially sleeping.
Yes.
Okay, so when I consciously connected the experience in Bali with the panic attacks that I was getting in Bombay riding my Vespa, basically it switched that track off,
Yep.
right? And then as soon as I made that connection, bang, no more panic attacks. So what is the subconscious mind doing? It's saying, okay, now you're consciously aware
Right.
of the
Right.
danger. You've connected it in your conscious mind. I don't need to keep reminding you anymore that the line in the road is dangerous. You're conscious of it, so it switches that program off. So that was 2014 was the first time that
Mhm.
I used my subconscious mind essentially to switch off that subconscious track that was giving me those panic attacks. So I had panic and anxiety attacks for about a 6 or an 8 month period, and
Yeah.
bang, I just like switched it off like a light switch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So every time this happens, and I've since 2014, so that was my first time that I switched off a subconscious track,
Yeah.
right? And so essentially what I've been doing is from 2014 is starting the process of studying the subconscious mind and how it works,
Yep.
and obviously in parallel studying GHK as well.
Yep.
Um, and then sort of muddling my way through for a 10-year period through various different disasters in order to really fundamentally work out how the subconscious mind works, how the conscious and the subconscious mind work
Okay.
together, which plays which role, and
Right.
how you can use or manipulate the subconscious mind
Mhm.
in order to change the way it functions, right? So,
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
I
Um, yeah,
sorry,
I want to point out too that the phenomenon that you're talking about is that when we find that original conflict shock, then and we connect it, right? We always talk about making the connections. When we
that's right,
connect it to our conscious mind, then oftentimes it all disappears.
that's right,
I
that's right.
remember Helmut Pilhar talking about that a lot. So this is a phenomenon known by Dr. Halmer and Helmut that if we can connect those dots and make it conscious, oftentimes it just disappears.
That's right, and I mean, over the years, I've taken it to crazy lengths, right? So, I mean, I'm what date are we on now? All right, I'm 20 days out. 20 days ago,
Mm.
I had a second reconstructive surgery on my jaw. Okay, you can still see some of the swelling on my face here, right?
Yep.
Um, and I went through the entire surgery with zero pain, zero pain. So what did
Oh,
I do, right?
yeah. What did you do?
Let's give some context. In 2019, I got cancer in my jaw, and there's another long story, but by the time I switched the cancer off and the tuberculosis mycobacteria removed, or the tumor that had been added on my jaw, basically all of my teeth fell out on one side of my upper jaw, right? So
Ooh.
I had to have a 5-hour reconstructive surgery with a bone graft and implants put in my jaw in order to be able to rebuild my jaw and have my teeth replaced. Okay, that when I went through that surgery, the first day I took a painkiller at the surgery, and I took one of the night of the surgery, and then the next day I thought to myself, oh, I wonder if I can switch this pain off, right? I'd switch pain off from backache and IBS and all sorts of different pains and stuff, right? But I'd never switched off pain from a physical injury,
Mhm.
i.e.
Right.
oral surgery, right? So
Right.
I'm sitting there and
Exactly.
thinking, right, okay, Danny, what is the biological purpose of pain? The biological purpose of pain is to stop me from using a part of the body so that it has a time, space, and energy to heal. Right, okay. I have no teeth. How can I, how can I chew on this side of my mouth? I have no teeth. So I said, right, okay. I had a stern discussion with my subconscious mind, right? And I said to my subconscious mind, right, subconscious mind, I know the biological purpose of pain is to give my body the time, space, and energy to heal. Okay, I've had this surgery. I have no teeth, right? So I can't chew on this side of my mouth. Subconscious mind, I'll give this the time, space, and energy to heal, switch off the pain, right? And bang, pain
And
just,
it switched
just
off.
right?
So you were connecting the biological purpose
Yes,
and you were acknowledging that and then
yes.
asking your psyche brain organ system, your subconscious to, I acknowledge that, I will take care of it, and we'll turn the pain off now. And it worked.
And it worked, right? And but then on the first time I made mistakes, right? So what happened is you try and chew on this side, right? But then
Right,
food
right,
does a switcheroo, right? And accidentally went around this side. And as soon as the food goes around that side, then you've broken the deal, right? The deal is
right.
I will not use this side of my mouth. I'll give it the time, space, and energy to heal. As soon
Yeah,
as the food goes round, then ba-dum, you get all of
right.
the pain and the throbbing comes back. And I'm like, oh, sorry, subconscious mind, that was an error. Uh,
Yeah.
let's
Okay.
go back to the old deal. I'll give it a time, space, and energy to heal, switch off the pain. And I had to do that 3, 4 times because I kept messing it up, right?
Yep.
Also, interestingly, during the first surgery, I mean, I slept for 20 to 22 hours a day, right?
Wow.
well, for 3 weeks whilst my jaw healed. Right now, in September, I woke up with the bridge in my mouth. Right. And I've looked back on it and I worked out, Andy, what happened is when I was preparing the bioswitch training course, the bridge fell out at the end of me recording the course. Right.
Oh,
So
yep.
what's happened is I've had a biting conflict
Ah,
that's gone into resolution when I was preparing the training,
yep.
and then of course the callus in the bone becomes soft, and then it couldn't hold the implant, and then the implant
Right.
fell out, and I woke up with a bridge in my mouth. Right, and I'm like, oh no, here we
Oh,
go again. So
oh crap. Yeah.
then I'm back to having no teeth again. Right.
Right.
So, wind forward, I had a second reconstructive surgery on my jaw, and this time, the my number one, I had to have a bone graft in my sinuses on the top of the sinus bone,
Okay.
in order to augment the bone because there wasn't enough bone, and the doctor insisted on putting industrial size implants in. So the first ones were 5 millimeters by 3 millimeters, and the second implants were 10 millimeters by 4 millimeters. So I've got these huge chunks of metal that they put in my jaw.
Wow.
And what I thought I would try this time, when I was on the way back from the surgery, and the anesthetic was still in play.
Right.
What I did on the way back from the surgery was I said, right, okay, subconscious mind, I know I've just had another reconstructive surgery and a bone graft in my on my jaw. Um, I still have no teeth, right? So the biological purpose of pain is to give it the time, space, and energy to heal. Um, I can't use that side of my mouth because I have no teeth, right? I'll give it the time, space, and energy to heal. And this is the key, Andy, right? I said, do not start the pain program in my jaw. I will give it the time, space, and energy to heal. Do not start the program, right?
Wow.
And when the anesthetic wore off, you know what happened?
No pain.
Nothing. No
Woo!
pain. No pain.
That is
Right.
phenomenal. Right.
And I've gone through and the last 3 weeks, we're 20 days out now, right? I've
Yep.
gone through 20 days with zero pain.
That is amazing.
Zero.
That is amazing, Danny.
And I know what I also did, which was even more amazing, right? In some ways. So last time I slept for 20 to 22 hours a day for 3 weeks, right? And so I essentially I blocked off January,
Yeah.
thinking that I'm just going to sleep through January, right? So
Right.
I
Right.
kept my entire calendar clear for January. And then and I was sitting there the night before the surgery, and I was doing some research on chronic fatigue, right? And in chronic fatigue, the jaw came up as a specific chronic fatigue trigger or conflict, right?
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there thinking, why does the jaw trigger a chronic fatigue program, right? And then I thought, oh, I get it. If your jaw's broken, nature assumes that you cannot eat,
Oh,
right?
good point. Right.
So nature triggers chronic fatigue when your jaw is broken because if it assumes you can't consume, then you should not burn. Because if you're burning without consuming, then you'll wither away, right? And this is a
Right.
survival
Right.
biological program, right? So I'm sitting
Right.
there thinking, I'm absolutely sure that that is the biological purpose of the chronic fatigue in jaw programs, right?
Oh,
So I'm coming again home from the surgery. I did the stern discussion about pain,
yep.
and switched that off first, right? And then I'm again coming back home and I'm like, okay, subconscious mind, I know the biological purpose of chronic fatigue in the jaw program is to stop you from burning when you can't consume.
Right.
Okay. I will ensure that through having fresh fruit juices and soft food, that I will be able to consume calories without using the broken side of my jaw. I will keep it on this side of my jaw, right? Do not switch on the chronic fatigue program. I'll
Wow.
consume enough calories, right? And
Right.
normally, last time I came home from the surgery, I came home and I was like, uh,
Right.
right?
Right. And this time that
It,
you were awake and energetic.
nothing, nothing.
That's
I've slept for uh, 8 or 9 hours a night. For me, that's normal, right?
right.
That's what I generally sleep. I have now. I've had fever. You don't touch is critical to healing, right?
Right.
Inflammation you don't touch is
You
critical
don't
to healing.
touch. Right.
I've had over the last couple of weeks a fever up and down, running in and
Okay.
out, right? And
Okay.
honestly, I felt, like when you're running a fever, right? I mean, you're not on a fully charged battery, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I've been running on like a 40 or 50% battery that is
Yep.
consistent with when you have a fever and a
Yep.
healing process going on. But I've had zero chronic fatigue, right? I switched
Okay.
the chronic fatigue off. I switched the pain off.
So what
Zero.
I to point out to the audiences that I know will be listening to this is when Danny is saying chronic fatigue, he's talking about that extreme tiredness after you've had a surgery or some major event such as that, and your body needs to rest in order to heal, which is we use the word chronic fatigue, and there's many programs that go with that here as a diagnosis. But Danny's talking about that fatigue that would make you rest after a big event such as surgery.
So for me, Andy, I mean, that basic rest basically means sleeping between 20 to 22 hours a day, right? I
Right.
mean, when my lung collapsed in 2000, I slept for 22 hours a day for 10 weeks.
Wow.
So
Right.
when my body is going through deep healing, whether it's from lung collapse or reconstructive surgery, whatever, my body, as a rule, shuts me down, right? So then
Exactly.
I literally sleep for 20 to 22 hours a day.
And it really should do that for all of us, but we don't allow ourselves that rest time here
That's
in,
right.
especially in America and North America, and I would say a lot of the developed world. We don't have time. We've got schedules, we've got to get to work. We are not going to sleep for 10 weeks. So, man, it does put us at a disadvantage when we don't even know how to take care of ourselves that way.
I've just got back 3 weeks of my life, Andy, right? Just by
Right.
understanding the
Understand.
biological purpose
Right.
of the chronic fatigue when a jaw program is running
Yep.
and finding a solution to that, right? It's not just, it's like, okay, I understand my nature is saying that if you can't consume, you shouldn't burn. So I'm saying, right, okay, I understand that, right? So what
Right.
I'm going to do is I'm going to find a way to consume to
Right.
make sure it's okay for me to burn.
So
So
that's
yeah,
an incredibly important part here, Danny, because a lot of us who are working with Gemanisha Heilkunde, and I see new folks coming in and starting to learn it. Well, how do I do this? This whole thing you've just talked about of finding the biological purpose and addressing that in your life for
that's
any
right.
chronic condition you have is key. What is the purpose
Absolutely
of this? Why
critical.
are you running this over and over again? Yes, you have tracks. It's great to figure that out, but address the purpose of this in your life. And
That's all
that's
I did, Andy. That's all I
that's
did,
what you
right?
did.
For
Right.
the pain and the chronic fatigue, all I did, I switched both of those programs off just on the basis of the understanding of the biological purpose of those programs.
Perfect. Perfect.
Nothing else. And with the chronic fatigue, with both actually, not only by understanding the biological, but finding a real life solution, right? So with
Right.
the with this, I mean, I put straws in my cup so that everything would only go this side
Yep.
and not go this side, so I could keep the deal of giving it time, space, and energy to heal, and not using this side, right? And
Yep.
with chronic fatigue, it was just making sure that I could consume enough calories so that my subconscious mind knew that it was enough going in so that it wouldn't shut me down so I wasn't burning when I was not consuming.
Right. Right. And that's just very biological. And that is why we have to understand biological thinking. Such an important part of Gemanisha Heilkunde.
Absolutely.
So, so Danny, have you had any awareness of, does this work only with endoderm programs, mesoderm programs, ectoderm programs, anything such as that? Old brain versus
Uh,
new brain. What have you noticed?
um, I honestly, I have to think about different brain parts. What I have worked out is that instead of looking at the brain as different parts, if you look at the law of two phases and you break that into separate parts, okay. Now, again, just let me give a little background and context here, right? The the analogy that when we're looking at our conscious and our subconscious mind,
Mhm.
the analogy, my guru in the subconscious mind space is actually an Irish doctor called Dr. Joseph Murphy. He
Okay.
he wrote and published a book in 1964 called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Uh-huh.
And this has essentially been my scientific chart of the subconscious mind, essentially, right? And the way he described the mind, the conscious and the subconscious mind, is he uses an analogy of it being like a ship on the ocean,
Okay.
right? So if you look at a ship on the ocean, you got the captain of the ship and you got the crew below deck, right?
Yep. Yep.
Now, the way Dr. Murphy describes this basically is that the conscious mind is like the captain of the ship, right? And the
Yep.
subconscious mind is the crew below deck.
Yep.
Okay, so the captain is the only person who has visibility
Mm-hmm.
of fully, because the crew are below deck and they can't see anything, right? So the crew
Right.
below deck, what do? They do what they're told,
Yep.
right? So
Right.
the captain says turn 5 degrees north, increase the speed, reduce the speed, drop the anchor, whatever. They do what they're told because they have no visibility, right?
Right.
Now, what I've learned is that the subconscious mind is exactly the same as a crew below deck when you learn to tell it exactly what you want it to do. So, like in my case, where I said, right, okay, do not switch on the pain program, right? Or do
Right.
not switch on the chronic fatigue. It just does what it's told, Andy, right? All you got to do is you
Right.
just got to learn what to tell it to do, right? If I sit there and say, "Oh, I'm feeling sick," and make me feel better, nothing's going to happen, right?
And nothing's
It's
gonna
like the
work.
captain of the ship saying to the crew below deck, "Oh, sail north." I mean, what do you mean sail north? What does that mean? You know, yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
so instead of looking at brainstem or old brain, new brain,
Right.
I'm sure if I go through, I've covered both old brain and new brain, because I've switched off IBS, which is old brain,
Yep.
and I've switched off rheumatoid arthritis, which is new
Okay.
brain,
Yep.
and jaw cancer, that was old brain. So
Yeah. So.
I've covered all parts of the brain. But one thing I have learned along the journey is
Mhm.
that so again, back to splitting the two phases, right? When you are conflict active, right, that is the land of the conscious mind.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. The captain, it's like, so if I'm in conflict activity, it's like the captain of the ship giving directions to change direction of the ship, right? If I'm in
Right.
conflict activity, if I want to resolve that conflict, I can
Mhm.
only do that with my conscious mind.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
Okay. Subconscious mind has no role to play in the first phase of the law of two phases. The
Mhm.
subconscious mind only comes into play once you've resolved the conflict, and once you've resolved the conflict, you can use the subconscious mind to literally switch out. You can change the rules of the intensity and duration
Mhm.
of a conflict, right? I mean, I
Right.
should have I should have slept for 3 weeks and I had thumping pain in my jaw,
Right.
because that's how the biological program would have run
Right.
if
Pain,
I had
swelling, inflammation in the healing phase. Yeah,
if
absolutely.
I hadn't have manipulated those biological programs running in my subconscious mind, right?
Right.
So
So
If
not
you're conflict active, you can only use your conscious mind. Once you get into the healing phase, then you can use your subconscious mind to switch off the or trigger a spontaneous cathartic healing where you turn months of healing into days, hours, minutes,
right.
or even seconds, where you
Well,
switch off subconscious tracks like the bike on the bike on the road,
right.
or where
Yep.
you even make fundamental changes to biological programs like the pain in my jaw or like the chronic fatigue. I mean, I switched those programs off before they started.
Where they started, which is amazing. So I want to point out too that you're not talking about stopping the healing phase. That's
No,
not what we're speaking here at all.
no,
You're
no.
allowing the healing to take place, but without the uncomfortableness of it.
Yeah, I mean in my training I have lots of examples, and you do this with pain. So when you consciously connect the cause of a problem to the symptoms of the problem.
Uh-huh.
So my first big one on this was in 2015 when I had ulcerative colitis for like
Yep.
15 years, right? And when
Wow.
I was on my way to do my practitioner's course with Ilzadora in 2015, um, I went to London, and my now wife came from Chile to meet my family for the first time, right? And within a few hours of being on the ground in the UK, I mean, for 72 hours, I had the most crippling colon cramps and loose motions. I was on the toilet every hour for like 72 hours. And
Wow.
I was like nearly passing. At one time, I passed out on the toilet with the
Wow.
colon cramps, right?
Right.
And um, so I'd studied a lot of the theory. I'd done levels 1 to 4 of Ilzadora. I was going to Toronto to do my practitioner's course, right? So anyway, we're lying on the bed at my parents' house, and my very clever wife, who was actually very clever, basically said, "Oh, let's try and use these new medical discoveries that you've been studying to see if we can solve this problem, right? Because I was supposed to be getting on a flight to Toronto, and I couldn't be more than like a nanosecond away from the bathroom, right? Because I was
Right.
literally running
Right.
to the bathroom every hour. So she just said to me, you what is the conflict that causes colon cramps? And I said, it's something that Dr. Hammer called indigestible anger, right?
Oh,
A problem, an ugly problem in life that you can't solve.
right.
And so she said to me, when does the pain start? And I said, after you've solved the problem. And she said, what problem have we solved by coming to the UK? And this is very early in my days, Andy, right? Connecting
Yep.
the
Yep.
dots was very difficult, right? And this was something that one of the most difficult problems that you resolve to try and identify is when the problem is resolved in your subconscious mind instead of your conscious mind, right?
Yes. Yes.
So when
Yes.
I went to the UK, there was no round table, conflab, family conflab type. We just went to my parents, sat in the back garden, all my family came round, we had a blast, all got drunk and had a great time, right? So this was a subconscious resolution of a conflict, not a conscious one.
Yep.
And so when we're laying on the bed, she said, okay, what problem have we resolved by coming to England? And I'm like, I don't know. I got no idea. Subconscious resolution, right? So
Right.
anyway, we laid there mooting through different options for an hour, and suddenly the penny dropped, right? My ex-wife and my family used to fight like cat and dog, right?
Oh,
And it was a very, very, very difficult relationship to manage,
yeah.
right? Now, with my new partner, they loved her, right? So I'd resolved the ugly conflict
Yes.
of my partner fights with my
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
right? And Andy, we were laying on the bed, and we'd been talking for about an hour, and I was folded in half, going, oh, like this, right? Because I'd like these absolutely crippling colon cramps.
Right.
And I said to Anud, I said, I think I found the conflict that we've resolved. And she said, what is it? I said, I think we've resolved the conflict that my partner fights with my family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
and and Andy, I'm not kidding you, right? I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, as soon as I said those magic words, we resolved a conflict and my partner fights with my family,
Yeah.
my stomach went dig, lig, 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 lig,
Yeah.
gone.
Gone.
And I didn't know what to do, right? So Anu said, what happened? I said, I don't know. My stomach just went dig, lig, 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 lig. And now I feel fine.
Now you're
She said,
fine. Absolutely.
she said, what do you mean you feel fine? She said, 2 seconds ago, you were roiling and rolled up on the bed with stomach cramps. I said, I don't know. I
It's
told you I've
it's
got no
that
idea how to use. I'm going to my practitioner's course. I got no idea how to use his medical discoveries, right?
that's a
But
perfect example.
I'm
Yeah.
laying on the bed and I went from being crippled with stomach cramps to being poof,
Right.
poosh,
Right.
gone, right?
So
And
I want to,
she said,
yeah.
let's wait for an hour. I'm like, okay, yeah, fine. Wait an hour, nothing, 2 hours, nothing, one day, nothing, one week, nothing. I mean, that's it, never going back again, right?
Fine. So I want to point out that's a fabulous story, Danny, and I want to point out how important it is for so many people, especially when you're starting out, to have that community so you can talk this through with someone.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's asking you, "Hey, what's going on? What have you resolved? What is this feeling like? What in your past is similar to what you're going through now?" And that will help to bring things up. When we have somebody listening to us, we can access parts of our subconscious versus if no one's listening to us. So always, always, always have somebody who you can talk to who understands this work and can help be that container for when you're able to access it and bring it out.
It's such an important point, Andy, and I'll give you a very prime example of that, right? I mean, in at the end of December of 2023, my mum passed away from the mandated medical interventions, right? And
Right.
I went into a deep depression.
Yep.
Okay. Now, this was in December 2023. I got to April 2024 and I was still in deep depression, Andy. Right. So, to your very point, I have a study buddy in Bombay. His name is Sham Mehta. He's a Supreme Court barrister, right? So
Mm.
this guy's the sharpest tool in the kit, right?
Right, right.
He started out as my student, and sometimes now I feel like he's my teacher. Right.
That's
So
beautiful.
I got
Yeah.
I got to April, and I called up Sham and I said, "Look, Sham, I'm in this deep depression, and Andy, I couldn't pull myself out of it, right? So
Right.
I said, Sham, look, I'm in this deep depression, and I just can't pull myself out of it." And Sham said, "Okay, Danny." He said, "Start out." He said, just monitor the unwanted negative thoughts that are coming to your mind." And he said, it will lead you in the direction of what's triggering the depression, right?
Yep.
So everything that was coming to me was basically based around my dad. Okay, now some background. When my mum died, my parents had been married for 56 years, right? And they were like conjoined twins, right? They had three children at the age of 20. They were
Wow.
grandparents by the age of 36.
Wow.
Great grandparents by the age of 61, with like
Wow.
100 grandchildren and great grandchildren and all it. I haven't played any role in that whatsoever, right? Except for being born. So I had convinced there's no way, Andy, that I could. They were so heavily codependent. There
Yeah.
was no way I could ever see a situation where if one went, the other one could live independently, right? So I'd convinced my subconscious mind for the longest period of time that when one of my parents died,
Yep.
the other one jumps in the hole, the other one's going to follow, right?
Right.
So what happened is when my mum died, my subconscious mind did exactly what I told it to do, right? So when I started monitoring these unwanted negative thoughts that were coming, basically it's all around my dad, right?
Yeah.
And then the penny dropped. I'm like, my God, all of these years I've been convincing my subconscious mind that when one of
Uh-huh.
my parents died, the
Uh-huh.
other one would die soon after. So So I had I went to bed on a Tuesday night, and I'd been in depression, deep depression, for about 3.5 months by this point, right?
Right.
And so I went to bed on a Tuesday night, and this is a discussion I had, right? I said, okay, subconscious mind, do you know I've been telling you all of these years that when one of my parents dies, the other one will go soon after? Well, I was wrong. Okay, my mum has died. My dad is still here, and he's still fit and fine and in good health. Touch wood.
Mhm.
Okay, now I cannot enjoy. I don't know whether he's got a day or a week or a month or a year or 10 years left. Right? I cannot enjoy that time with him if I'm in deep depression. Right?
Right.
So
Right.
switch off to deep depression, and then I went to sleep. Right now,
Yeah.
and I woke up on Wednesday morning in a state of euphoria.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Danny, that's amazing.
Gives me goosebumps now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
I
Me too.
I woke up on Wednesday morning in a state of euphoria, as though the world had been lifted off my shoulders, and I just woke
Yep.
up and got out of bed, and I'm like, wow,
It's like,
what a beautiful world,
wow.
right? Now, I mean, that was by far the most cathartic healing experience I've ever
Yeah.
gone through in my
That's
life, right? I mean, that
incredible.
was transformative. I mean, we're talking about switching off deep depression here, right?
Right.
Now,
Right. And that it,
I knew that something was going to happen, Andy, right? Mental, something physical, right?
right.
Next night, I'm on a plane to Dublin, all right? And I get woken up sleeping on the flight, feeling like somebody's got a baseball bat
Yep.
whacking me in my right kidney,
Oh,
right? So I didn't know what symptoms I was going to experience, because I didn't know how my subconscious mind experienced the loss of my mum, right? But then I
right.
found out the next day, abandonment conflict, right?
Right.
Because
Oh,
then I had the Charlie horse in the kidneys,
yep.
right? So I'm in
Yep.
my right kidney. So then for 3 weeks, periodically, I had crippling kidney cramps in my right kidney.
Yep.
And obviously healing crisis, let it play out. And
Yeah.
then once all of the fluid had been removed from the kidney and the brain, that process ended, and then it was over. But what an experience,
That's
Andy.
amazing.
What an
Danny,
experience.
do you feel like there was any depression from a right territorial conflict that had been activated?
Yeah, it's from my mum's death, right?
Yeah. So territorial loss or
Yeah, but it was you can't get the depression without the territorial conflict, right?
yeah.
So it's straight right side of the brain, you know. Uh, I've just had my brain CT done. Maybe I'll have a look at it and find out
There you
exactly
go.
where.
See
But
which one it was. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I'll go and find out exactly which relay was hit.
So I want to point out something else because I'm often talking about it's our identities and our beliefs that keep us stuck. So
That's
when
right.
you were able to see that belief you had convinced yourself of, when one goes, the other's going to go, that kept you stuck.
That kept me stuck. That's
And
right.
so what you're talking about here, Danny, is for us as humans to become conscious, to become much more aware and conscious of our thoughts and our beliefs and our identities that we've built up over time that are
Uh,
contributing to our current symptoms or mood disorders or behaviors.
Andy, I created the conditions for my own depression.
Yes, yes,
Right?
we all,
By my constant reinforcing belief that my parents could never live independently, and that when one goes in the hole, the other one's going to follow.
right.
That created the entire foundation for the depression after my mum died, right? So
Yep,
I created my own depression. I just had to be able to connect the dots between it. And then once I connected the dots between it,
yep,
use my conscious mind to reprogram my subconscious mind. Now, the one thing that I have to advise is that you cannot bluff your subconscious mind,
This
right?
is so true, right? You
You
can't lie
cannot
to it.
bluff. If you lie to your subconscious mind, right? If I sit there and say, "Oh, uh, uh, I believe this, I did believe this, and now I believe this," if you don't believe it,
Believe
your
it.
your subconscious mind is going to know it, right?
Yes,
So you
exactly.
can you can only make major rewiring of your subconscious mind when you truly believe it.
Right. And that's another exercise for us in, do I believe this or not? And you might think you do, and you might be trying to convince yourself of that. And that's where we've got to strip it away and get real. What's
That's right.
real here? What am I really
Absolutely.
thinking? What am I really feeling? What is the trigger that's been there this whole time? What are my real identities and beliefs about myself?
That's right.
Yeah.
Very
So,
important.
how about dangers? Is there any time somebody shouldn't do this?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Hummer laid out a set of principles where if you have, gone through, if you've had a conflict running for a lifetime, 40, 50 years, you don't
Yeah.
touch it, right?
Right.
So if you've had type 1 diabetes from childhood or you're in your 40s, you don't touch those. Um, Similarly, I mean, all of the rules Dr. Hummer laid out.
Right.
If you have an angina pectoris,
Right.
a program on coronary arteries that have been running for more than 9 months. If you resolve that conflict, you'll die of a massive heart attack, right? So, um, all of
All the
the
usual.
rules that Dr. Hummer put in place in the areas that we should not go to, I still do not go to. So
Yeah.
if somebody
Okay.
comes to me to try and address one of those issues, I'll just say, thank you. Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Nope.
Exactly. And I'll just add to that list the coronary vein for more than 9 months if you've had the angina
Yeah,
pectoris for that. So we'll just add that in. But that is
yeah,
all common sense as far as Dr. Hammer, gave us that information. It's
that's
all
right.
common sense. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about, all right, I'm going to ask you another question here, is that there are many naysayers out there when somebody comes up with something new for Germanische Heilkunde who say, oh, Dr. Hammer didn't discover that. It's not real. It's not true. What would
That's right.
you say to them?
So I've done a detailed study, obviously, of the biological solution, and I mean, as I mentioned to you at the very beginning of this discussion, I mean, the way I look at it, need is the mother of all invention.
Mhm.
Right? Now, Dr. Hummer did not look into the subconscious mind in terms of how to manipulate the subconscious mind um, uh, uh, as a part of his medical discoveries. Now, you say, why is that the case? Okay, now, if you look at the acts of turnover as a
Mhm.
good example, right?
Yep.
He's got a 74-year-old man with pericardial effusion. Okay, he's done a 45-minute session to try and identify the attack on the heart he had, and it was a no, 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 no. And then
Yeah,
he comes back in, takes a different track, asks him what he does for a living and whether he has a dog. Right? Dr. Hummer was a genius.
he
Right?
was. He was.
He had that acts of turnover case just demonstrates his ability to be able to, he understands that trauma is buried in the subconscious mind, right?
Right.
But he had an extraordinary ability to be able to get that to surface, right?
Right.
Now, what I discovered, Andy, when I first really started helping people in sort of 2016, 2017, is I am not I don't have, 160, 170 IQ, whatever Dr. Hummer had, right? I
Yeah.
do not
Right.
have the ability to be able to get those buried traumas to be able to surface by identifying tracks and reminders that, an old man, who's had an axe in his chest, right? And whether he has a dog or not, right? I just can't do that, right? So I need is a mother of all creation. I understood that trauma was buried, but I had to find another way.
Right.
in order to get that trauma to surface, right?
Yeah.
So this is when I started down the route of studying the subconscious mind, right? Now, what I've discovered since, and I'll give you some examples, right? Now, in the biological solution, in a nutshell, is ideally a real life resolution to a conflict or changing your view on a problem and avoiding the tracks,
Yeah.
right? Now, in 2021, 22, I had rheumatoid arthritis in my arm that started in my bicep at the injection point and went down to my thumb. And that was triggered. My wife is a diplomat, and she was mandated to take the jabs.
Yeah.
So that that rheumatoid arthritis was triggered by that conflict,
Yeah.
right? Now, according to the biological solution, I've got to get a real life resolution to the conflict, which in itself was difficult, and avoid the
Right.
tracks, right?
Right. Right.
Now, even once I resolved that conflict, my wife was a central track to that conflict,
Right. Yes.
right? Now, to avoid that track, basically, and my wife was a central track to the conflict. My residence was loaded with sidetracks, right? So essentially, to avoid those tracks, if I had no other tool available, then I would have had to have divorced my wife and moved home.
Right.
Okay. Now, that was not an acceptable resolution to that
And
conflict.
it wouldn't be for most people.
So
Exactly.
then how do you avoid it? So every time I saw my wife, Andy, what happened? The pain went whoop
Yeah.
like this, right? Because she's a central track to the conflict.
Right.
So it was only by learning to switch off those subconscious tracks in my subconscious mind that I could find a solution to that problem without having to divorce my wife,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or without having to move home. If I hadn't developed the modality of the bioswitch and learned to manipulate these biological programs in my subconscious mind, I would today still have rheumatoid arthritis in my left arm
Yeah.
every time I saw my wife, right? So
Wow.
you
Yeah.
have to find a solution, right? Now, avoiding the tracks is nature's design, right? I don't know whether you
Right.
know, but to work out nature's design, Dr. Hummer used to use animals, right? And particularly used to use his dogs, right? So
Yep.
Dr. Hummer always kept boxer dogs, right? Now, one day, these dogs used to wait in the car. One day, the window was half down.
Yep.
Dogs jumped out the window to chase another dog down the road, but the female dog got stuck jumping out the window, fell from the car window and broke her pelvis,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Now, after a few months after she'd healed, Dr. Hummer did a test, right? And he put a cooked sausage on the car seat, and he took the female boxer outside and left the car door open, and the boxer would not get in the car to get the sausage, and the boxer would not get in the car again ever.
Ever. Yeah.
Okay, because nature's design, and animals follow it
They do.
beautifully, is to avoid the tracks, right? So that
Absolutely.
dog would never get back in that car again,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now, as human beings, number one, we're completely desensitized to tracks, but in some cases, like mine, I mean, we're always in situations where our spouse is either a side track or a central track to a conflict. Or I mean, this jaw cancer was caused by a 5-second fight with my wife,
Ah,
right? The
right.
rheumatoid arthritis was caused by my wife, right? I
Right.
mean, this is
Right.
the nature of being in a close and loving relationship, right?
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
end up in situations where you traumatize each other, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's life, right?
It happens. Right.
Now, if even if you can resolve the conflict in real life, the subconscious mind will still store subconscious tracks and reminders. And if your spouse is a subconscious track or reminder, and worst case, if your spouse is a central track,
Yes.
then
Yes.
how are you going to solve that problem?
Right.
Okay, so
Exactly.
the system of the bios switch that I've developed does not. The only alteration that I would say that it makes to Dr. Hummer's medical discoveries is once you learn to use your subconscious mind, as I mentioned earlier, when
Mhm.
you get into a healing phase, if you've been in a conflict for 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years, under the standard rules of GHK, then you're in a healing phase for six
Right,
months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, right?
right,
Now, the only change to Dr. Hummer's medical discoveries that I've made so far basically is changed the rules where when you learn to consciously connect to the cause of that problem and switch off those subconscious tracks, you
yep,
can make a 6 month, 1 year, 5 year healing phase into 1 week,
right,
2 days, 2 hours, 2 minutes, or if it's a subconscious track, 2 seconds.
right, right. So you're just
Okay.
talking to your subconscious, your psyche, brain, organ system, and telling you're directing it on what to do.
So my message to the naysayers is, I mean, if you limit your problem solving skills only to your conscious mind, there are what happens when your subconscious mind buries the trauma.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
What happens when you have subconscious tracks and reminders, right, that will continuously re-trigger the problem, even if you've resolved the problem in real life, and then you're in chronic territory, right? I mean, honestly, Helmut, I mean, he had psoriasis on his hands, right?
Mhm.
That he got from a near accident on the autobahn in Germany. I mean, he lived for a lifetime with the pain of that eczema on his fingers, right?
Right,
Because at that point in time we hadn't discovered the ability to switch off tracks, right?
right, right,
Now I could have said to him, once you get in your car, switch that track off, right? And then the pain won't come, the program won't run whilst you're driving. You can switch that track off. In the same way I switched off the rheumatoid arthritis with my wife. Now sometimes, Andy, when you got a central track, sometimes I had to switch that off 100 times a day,
yep, yep.
right? So
That's
I hit,
normal.
hit a track, pain starts, switch it off, and then
Yep,
the pain stops, and then you hit another track, and then the pain starts, and then
right,
switch it off, and the pain stops. So sometimes that's the only option available to you, right? If you
right.
can't get a real life resolution to the conflict, and you've got a central track. But my wife's a central track to the rheumatoid arthritis, right? And I switched that track off. The rheumatoid arthritis is completely gone. So all I would say
Yeah,
is
yeah.
need is the mother of all creation. My personal experience, for what it's worth, with all sincerity, is that when the conscious mind is 3 to 5% of our problem solving capacity, the subconscious mind is 95 to 97% of our problem
Right,
solving capacity,
right.
right? When you Dr. Hummer has given us a Google map, right, of our
Hmm.
biology.
Exactly.
Beautiful, right? A
Yes.
Google map of our biology, right?
Right.
So between the cause of the conflict category, the biological purpose, your timeline, with that little bit of information, when you learn to use your subconscious mind in collaboration or combination
Mhm.
with the scientific chart, it puts Dr. Hummer's medical discoveries on steroids. I
And
mean,
that's really
I
what
switch.
we need right now.
I can't read on the scientific chart, Andy. I've had a surgery on my jaw. How
Right,
do I switch the pain off before it starts, right?
right. That's not included on the chart.
But,
Yeah.
but you can do that. It's
You
possible
can,
now. It's
right.
possible.
Phew,
Yeah.
I love everything you've discovered here, Danny. This is awesome. Can you tell the listeners then you've got a course, right? Give us some stats, how long does it take to get through it and how do they find it? All of that.
So I've structured. Shall I? Let's get into the foundation. I'd never planned to set up a course, Andy. Right?
I know. No.
In May, June, and July last year, I was woken up I was woken up, right,
Yep.
at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2:30, three
Uh-huh.
o'clock in the morning, every every night for 3 months, every night, with downloads coming from for the first month. For the first month, the downloads were coming. Danny, you need to rewrite your breast cancer book, right? You've missed this, you missed this, change the structure, do this, right? Oh
Yep.
my Lord. I swear these could only have been with the specificities, right? I mean, I missed out bone cancer in metastasis, right? So I got this download one giving me all of the things I'd missed, right? And
Oh,
when the downloads stopped coming about the book, then they started coming about this course, right? So this has never happened to me before, right? It's just
amazing.
totally mind-bending experience, right?
Right.
And I started getting these downloads. Danny, you've got to set up a course to teach people to trigger spontaneous cathartic healing in the same way you switched off your depression,
Awesome.
right?
Awesome.
So then, but not only do I get instruction, yeah, I swear Dr.
Yeah.
Hummer's involved in this, right?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
swear Dr. Hummer's, nobody could be so specific in terms of
Right.
how to structure it, right?
Right.
So then for a 2 month period, Andy, I'm woken up every night. All it is all crazed, bloody 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, just drawings, right? This module. This is how you structure it. Yeah. This course is neither my idea nor my invention, right? This is
It wrote itself, basically.
it's divine downloads, Andy. I had no plans to set up a course, right?
Woohoo! Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm
Love it.
woken up every night for 3 months, right? Sitting up for an hour, 2 hours every night, making mad notes like this is module one, this is how you structure it. I mean, I was talking to you at this time, right? This is module one, this is module two. I'm getting downloads from this. And
For
I mean,
mad scientist. Yes.
insane, Andy, right? So I'm just a tool of implementation. This is essentially not my intellectual property or creation. It was divinely downloaded, and literally all I've done is what I've told, right? So at the moment, the way I've set it up is I've set it up as a 12-month course.
Okay.
Basically, there are 13 hours of recorded content, right? You did module two.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Teaching you did the biological solution. You did a wonderful job of that. You did the conscious mind stuff. I did the subconscious mind stuff, right? So it's 13 hours of recorded content. I then have, I'm doing a monthly Q&A, live
Oh,
Q&A, right?
good.
So the first month was on switching off hip pain. Last month was switching off food allergies.
Ah,
This month, I'm going to bring on another person who contributed significantly to the course, and that's Ingmar Marquette.
oh,
And
perfect.
he's developed something called the blind solution, where he switched off asthma, bronchial asthma that he'd suffered for 30 years, that he got whilst he was in an incubator immediately after he was born, right?
Oh,
So
man.
so he has developed something called the blind solution, where he made all of these assumptions as to where I could have had this territorial fear, conflict, and all of these things, and it works out he was in an incubator as soon as he was born. So
Yep.
we're going to do a live Q&A with Ingmar, and then each month I'm going to take a different health subject
Mhm.
that is switched off, so toothache or IBS and ulcerative, anything. Every month I'll just
Yeah.
take a different subject.
Different.
And
Perfect.
what I've done is I've put a community group on my website
Okay.
so that people can come in and, I mean, you're learning a new skill, right? So you're going to
Right.
get stuck,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So what I've
Absolutely.
done is I've put a community group up so that you can come in and you can, I'm stuck on this, I'm trying to do this, or you can
Right.
post your
Help.
subconscious command, and then I'll review the command and find out to make sure that you've got the correct elements in the subconscious command. So I've put a community group up to support it.
Right.
Um,
And your
you
website is dannycarroll.com.
That's my author website.
Okay.
My training website, I put it on a short URL, and
Yep.
it's THT. .fyi/bioswitch. I can
Okay,
I can
we'll put that
maybe
in.
add it onto the reel.
Yeah.
But if you go to my website, danny-carroll.com, if you go to the featured on page, what I've done is I've put up module one, the introduction to the bioswitch. I've
Mhm.
put up the inaugural live Q&A on switching off hip pain. I think there are like 4 or 5 case studies of people who've had chronic hip pain and then switched the hip pain off. And what I've done is after the surgery, after my reconstructive surgery on the jaw, I did a post-surgery update on how I switched off the pain
Yep.
in my jaw and switched off the chronic fatigue. So what I've
Yep.
done is I've done a very short, that was an update for the training.
Okay.
There's one module on jaw cancer in the training. So I did a training update to that. I've posted that on the featured on page on my website as well. So it'll give you you can
Yeah.
get, it's like you got 3.5 hours of the of material there that you can go through and
Mm,
just see
mhm.
whether you're connecting or whether you're resonating with it or not. Um,
Right. Okay.
and for what it's worth, Andy, my belief is that particularly when you're dealing with things like subconscious tracks and
Mhm.
reminders, um, if you are in a situation where a spouse or a family member or a house, which is often going to happen, right, is either a side or a central track to
Yep.
being to re-triggering that biological program. So far, this is the only solution I've found that successfully resolves those type of issues.
And that's fabulous, and that's exactly what we need because we don't have Dr. Hammer and his expertise right now. And it sounds like this came from Dr. Hammer, so we do have
I,
this.
I think it came from Dr. Hammer, honestly.
Danny, thank you so much for this amazing information and for being present to create all of this for all of humanity. This is fabulous. So thank you so
I
very
don't know why I was chosen, Andy,
much.
but
Well, you
it's
were.
it's such a blessing, and it's just life transforming. I just can't tell you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, thank you for all that you've done and this incredible gift to humanity and to those of us with Ganesha Hailakunde who are using that. So, Danny, thank you so much for this, taking the time to speak with me today. I'm so very grateful, and I know a lot of people are going to enjoy this video.
Thank you, Andy. It's always an absolute pleasure.
Always. All right, you take care, Danny. Take care.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye-bye.